You are pressing your luck. 52-851, and he's going again. Stop! Fourth out!
This is Michael Larson. Here he is cheating a game show. He will break the record for the largest one-day total ever won on a game show and walk away with a fortune. His game show story certainly is an interesting one, but so are the stories of how he got there and what happened to him afterwards. So, let's look at all of it. Michael Larson was born on May 10th, 1949 in Ohio, USA. While he was intelligent and determined, Michael demonstrated from a young age an eagerness to underhandedly make quick money. In middle school, he'd smuggle candy bars to class and sell them for double the price. This style stayed with him throughout his life. As he grew up, he'd constantly be looking for some way to game the system. Once, he found a bank that offered $500 for opening a new checking account, so he opened a bunch under fake names. Another time, he registered a business under a family member's name, hired himself, which I suppose is technically a form of nepotism, and then fired himself so he could get unemployment benefits. But I mean, at that point, he kind of deserved it, you know. It sucks getting fired and it sucks firing people, and he had to do both in one go. Michael mostly coasted on these payouts and rarely had steady employment, so he spent his life largely just scraping by. By his 30s, he worked as an ice cream man during the summers and was hooked on finding opportunities in his new obsession, game shows. Larson had a wall of TVs, all playing infomercials and game shows simultaneously while he studied them for any flaws or loopholes he could exploit. Eventually, he had a favourite, CBS's Press Your Luck. The meat and potatoes of the game revolved around contestants stopping the buzzer as it randomly darted across a board of infinitely changing tiles. Except, it wasn't random. The selector actually only had 5 patterns which repeated predictably, and the tiles didn't change infinitely. There were only 3 rotating options for each tile, which also repeated predictably. When Larson realised this, he set up a VCR and recorded the show, playing it on repeat and studying the patterns. Michael Larson spent 6 months analysing the game board and the patterns of the selector, eventually learning what each option for each tile would be, as well as where the selector would fall next. He practiced his theory by hitting pause on his VCR to stop the selector as if he was actually playing on the game show. And Michael's theories proved correct. The only thing he had to do now was find a way onto the game show and he could guarantee a big win. I find it interesting that these people often spend more time and effort working on a con than any normal person would at an honest job. There's something somewhat ironic about that. The problem was, how the hell was he going to get onto the game show? It's a game show. You get to be on TV, play a fun game and walk away with some money. There's thousands of losers trying to turn their fortunes around with these things. I mean, how many people play the lotto? Every time you go to the shop, there's some old person wasting everyone's time asking for the lottery tickets behind the counters so they can have a 0.0000001% chance of being a millionaire. Fucking old people. What the fuck are you gonna do if you won anyways? You had your fucking chance to be rich, cunt. Get the hell out of the line and die with some dignity. In 1984, Michael used the last of his money on a bus ticket from Ohio to Los Angeles, hoping to audition for Press Your Luck. He bought a cheap suit in a thrift store, and audition he did. The show's contestant supervisor got a bad feeling about Michael. He didn't know why, but he knew he couldn't trust him. He didn't want Larson on the show. But Larson managed to convince the show's executive producer. With his tale of being a broke ice cream man who travelled all the way from Ohio, he'd make a great sob story for the game show. And Larson was on. Before the show, Michael struck up friendly conversation with one of his competitors, Baptist minister Ed Long, who was the returning champ from the last episode. His other competitor, Janie Littress, said, "Michael just seemed creepy. He had a creepy smile. He just seemed like a creepy person. And I knew I could beat this creepy person." Bitch of a woman. The game then commenced, opening with a trivia round to determine each player's number of spins on the game board. Michael does not fare so well here, and he even kind of makes an ass of himself.
You've probably got President Franklin D. Roosevelt in your pocket or purse right now because his likeness is on the head side. Michael.
$50 bill.
Of what American coin is the correct answer? A $50 bill, a nickel, or a dime?
Then it's time for the game board. This is what Michael had been studying for. Each tile on the game board has 3 rotating options. These options include money, a non-cash prize, extra spins, and a whammy. Selecting a whammy would erase all the money you had earned, so continuing to use your spins when you had good cash was a risky move, aka pressing your luck. But Larson had memorized the game board tiles and their options. He knew where everything was and when the selector would land on them, and most importantly to his strategy, he knew 2 tiles where all the possible options were extra spins, meaning he could play indefinitely. But when it was his time to play, Michael made a balls of it, immediately landing on a whammy, and then landing on a trip to Kauai, which was unintentional. You can actually see the disappointment in his face before he feigns excitement. Somehow everything Michael had trained for was getting away from him. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. The pressure of being on the big stage seemed to throw off his focus and timing. There was vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti. But then Michael finds his stride, and utilizing his extra spin strategy, he goes on a winning streak, which just keeps on going and going and going and going for dozens of spins as Michael racks up tens of thousands of dollars and his competitors can do nothing but sit on their arses. You can see Ed seems to be genuinely happy for Michael, but Janie's annoyance starts to show. Heh. In the control room, the CBS production crew is freaking out. Michael keeps landing on the same extra spin squares over and over. This is not luck, this is skill. Is there any way we can stop this? Someone asks. But there is no way. There simply are no brakes on the Larson train. After 47 spins, Larson had amassed $104,950 in cash, a sailboat, a trip to the Bahamas, and a trip to Kauai, the most ever won in one sitting of a game show.
We'll be back sometime.
Ed got whammied and lost all of his money, but he still walked away with the $11,516 he had won in the previous episode. Janie also got whammied and got nothing. Eat shit, bitch. CBS were not happy about Michael Larson's monumental win. Nearly every department head gathered in a room to review the footage frame by frame and discuss the massive payout. It became clear to them that Larson had memorized the game board, as he would often celebrate his wins before he would have had time to process them naturally, as well as land on the same 2 squares over and over. They meticulously combed the rules and clauses of the game show to find some way they could avoid paying him, rat bastards that they are. But there was nothing. Michael didn't break any rules. They paid him his money, and he wasn't invited back. The game mechanics were immediately changed to be virtually impossible to predict. Another problem for CBS was, Larson had spent so long playing that the game went on longer than the allotted time for an episode, which had never happened before. Confused, they eventually opted to split the footage into 2 episodes, which they were hesitant to air, as it was embarrassing for them. They eventually relented and aired it once, and never again. Michael Larson could finally live his life in comfort, but funnily enough, his wily ways never left him. Mere months later, he heard about a contest on the radio where the show would read out a serial number on the air every day, and if a listener could match that number to a $1 bill, they'd win $30,000. Michael withdrew 50 grand from 5 different banks in $1 bills and began checking them for a match, but to no avail. Then one day when he was out, someone robbed his house and made off with his 50 grand. Christ, it must have been some hassle for them when it was all in $1 bills. Like, what the actual fuck is all this? Who does this? By the 90s, Larson had launched a fraudulent lottery scam, hope he got some of those old fuckers, and scammed investors out of $3 million. With the SEC, the IRS and the FBI after him, Michael went on the run. And he was never caught, God bless him. His whereabouts were unknown until his death, which was sadly only a few years later. In 1999, Michael Larson passed away at the age of 49, dying of throat cancer in Apopka, Florida. Eventually, in 2003, the rights to rerun Press Your Luck belonged to the Game Show Network, who finally aired the Larson episodes as part of a 2-hour documentary and broke all previous viewership records for the network. In a rebooted version of the show, they re-invited Ed and Janie back on to play against Larson's brother James, who continued the family legacy by winning. Larson's record was only broken in 2006 when a contestant on The Price is Right won $147,507. However, adjusting for inflation, Larson's winnings would have been equivalent to $210,000. So, he's still the champ for me.
Big buck!